Kelly Carden, candidate for District 2 Supervisors. Thank you so much for joining us in studio today.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's start by just introducing yourself to our viewers. Just give us a brief background, where you're from, where you grew up, your a brief career rundown, all of that.
Yeah, Jenny, so again, thanks for having me. My name is Kelly Carden Jr. I grew up in Roseman. I'm a third generation resident of the 2nd District. I actually came to Roseman when I was 9 months old, a couple months after my dad passed away. And my mom actually met my stepdad in Roseman, so it gave me history. So my grandma was actually a librarian in Roseman. My grandfather helped build the freeway. And from there, I grew up there, went to high school in 2013. My mom was a small business owner. I worked in pizzerias. I have a heavy background in hospitality and guest services. And I feel as if somebody from that kind of background needs to speak out.
Mm-hmm. And so someone from that type of background, as you said, how do you feel like you can contribute directly to the Board of Supervisors in this county?
Well, so what's happening in this race is we're recognizing that there's small communities, unincorporated communities in small cities that are being ignored. And what's happening is we're seeing people talk about these communities if they're far away and if they know all the answers for them. But I'm actually from these communities. So what can I bring to the Board of Supervisors? I can actually bring an aspect that comes from the towns that are supposedly being underserved. So if everyone believes that, then the person who the most closely resembles that should really be the obvious choice.
And I'm just looking for this exact terminology you used here to describe kind of the underrepresentation of those remote areas. I can't find it. I think you said something about the redhead child, right? You've used that multiple times.
Yeah, so anywhere that you travel throughout the 2nd District, so whether it's on the west side of the county, Taft and Maricopa, or all the way to the east, Boron and Mojave, everyone says that this says the same thing about the way that the Board of Supervisors represents their town. They feel as if they're the redheaded stepchilds of the district.
There we go, yes.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we can let people feel that way. I mean, and I certainly think it's not okay, and I do not think it's okay to treat people that way, and I certainly won't if I'm elected.
And so is that kind of the biggest hole you think the former supervisor leaves behind when it comes to, his decades-long service in District 2?
Absolutely. So my mother's a small business owner. She had a business for 30 years. She was born into abject poverty. My grandfather was a guerrilla fighter during World War II. My grandmother was an illiterate housewife. So when my mom came to America as a child war bride and she built a family and built her life, she didn't actually achieve her American dream until she came to Kern County. Came to Kern County, she met my stepdad. They've been together for 40 years now. I've been in the same house, in the same town my entire life. But you know what she used to tell me as a business owner? That she saw the previous supervisor 13 times. 13 times he got in a parade and he drove in front of our family business, and not a single time did he ever come inside. I think it's ridiculous that you can claim to be fiscally conservative, claim to be pro-economy, and then not even support the businesses in the small towns that you claim that you recognize as being underserved. So when I go out to these towns, when I was in Taft last week, I'm going to be in Maricopa in the next week or two. When I go to these towns, I spend my money there. I eat there. I talk to the business owners there. Not just the people that show up to my events, I go looking for them as well. And I think that that's the biggest gap, is just the simple fact that nobody's willing to actually speak on behalf of the people from these unincorporated communities, because they're just stopovers. It's easy to say I'm going to go to Mojave and I'm going to talk to people throughout the day, but going to Mojave for me is a Tuesday. I mean, I spend my entire life in these small communities. I hit my first home run in Mojave. Mm-hmm. I played basketball against Boron when I was in junior high and high school. I played against Fraser Park. My cousin and her husband, he's a fire captain for Cal Fire. They lived in Pine Mountain Club for 20 years. So I'm connected to these communities. This isn't just something that I say, it's something that I share. I share heritage and history with the people who live in unincorporated Kern County. I share in their concerns of being underrepresented, and I share in the consequences of failing to do anything to fix that.
We're going to get into issues a bit more later, but I have to address the fact that this is actually your second time running for the seat. Back in 2022, you ran against Scrivner directly. You placed second with about 22% of the votes, but the former supervisor still did overwhelmingly with over 70% of the votes. So tell us about your performance and really how the district kind of votes, because you're saying you have all these critiques about the former supervisor, but at the end of the day, more than 70% of the voters voted for him.
Yeah, I think unfortunately when it comes to these small towns, because they're so uninformed, Name recognition just goes a long way, and it's also it's by design. There's a reason why they don't want the county is passing these laws and to keep the closed primary. They don't want a jungle. They don't want us in the election in November. There's fewer voters. They have bigger control over it. It's hard. And also, unfortunately, got a lot of last time was voter apathy. People said that, hey, if you were to run a second time, I would absolutely vote for you. People that were messaging me as I went along. And after the first debate, I got hundreds and hundreds of messages from people saying, Kelly, if I had seen that debate first, I would have voted for you. So I was really encouraged. And I also raised no money. I ended up spending about 30 cents a vote. So that meant a lot to me too. I was able to do all of these things without any money. I spoke a message that resonated with people, and I just didn't get in front of enough eyes. I think that's the difference between this time and last time.
And last time you ran as a libertarian. I know it's technically a nonpartisan office, but you did run with that political background. Is it the same this time around, your political philosophy?
So I am. I am a registered libertarian. I am one of the only libertarians in the entire state that's actually an elected official. In my current position as the director for the Roseman Municipal Advisory Council, I already sit in a seat that exists to advise the Board of Supervisors. It's kind of funny, a good buddy of mine describes me as the Republican whisperer, because what's happening all across the county is Republicans are supporting me because I match with what they're saying, with what they believe.
And tell us more about that position on the municipal council, because I know during the Mojave Candidate Forum, one of your kind of goals that you mentioned was for all of these smaller communities, you wanted to create those advisory boards and kind of community councils. So tell us more about that vision.
Yeah, so the entire idea is around campaign promises. Campaign promises are incredibly narcissistic, so we shouldn't be saying them. And the people of the 2nd District deserve more than empty campaign promises. So what I want to do, my entire platform is based around what I can do without everyone else's support. I'm allowed to create municipal advisory councils. That's, the state constitution dictates that. The reason why is because it strengthens voices. So for instance, in Roseman, we have 23,000 residents, and the only elected officials we have is our advisory council. Through that, we've been able to advocate to the county for things like community cleanups. We have a sheriff's office that's going to be open. We've brought in different kinds of classes for seniors, on technology classes for seniors. We're working on bringing in more medical programs. The county has their bus. We like to bring that into town more. So what happens is, by gathering the communities into one location, you can then organize, amplify, and empower voices to speak back to the county from positions of power and strength. Because what typically happens from like a community like Mojave, you get 3 or 4 people, they'll go to the Board of Supervisors meeting. That's 3 or 4 people shouting into the void. But when you get people from your advisory council going, they're speaking on behalf of your entire community, and that carries weight. It's the entire purpose of our elected system of government, right? And what can be a better way of empowering people who feel as if they're silenced and they have no voice than to simply give them elected representation so they can speak on behalf of themselves?
Would these people get paid? Do you think people
They're
would be
not.
willing? And I'm assuming you're not paid either then?
I am not paid.
Okay.
So it is a volunteer position, and it's the pride that comes with it.
You think enough people will sign up for it, though, especially in the remote communities?
Absolutely. Most of these remote communities, we're not paid for any of the boards that we're on. So they're already used to that. And what happens is, a lot of times these are guys that are retired, they're property owners, they're business owners already. They don't need the money. They just want to see their towns better. So do I think that we can find 7 people from the desert communities, 7 people from the mountain communities? Yes.
We've talked a lot about representation. When it comes to specific issues that matter to the district, Kelly, and I'll let you take a sip of water first, but I'm curious, when it comes to specific issues, what are you hearing from future constituents? What's your priority, kind of day one of taking office, that you think you need to tackle right off the bat?
So the biggest problem that people have in the 2nd District is that they feel as if they're too far from the county seat. So not enough information gets delivered from Bakersfield to small communities. So that's going to be the number one priority. It's the exact purpose of these boards, are to be a center where, an area where information can be gathered and disseminated, so that programs are available to the entirety of the county. For instance, every year we do different grants for businesses, but by the time people in Roseman even hear about it, the money's already gone. So what I want to do is I want to use councils like our municipal advisory councils, and then public-private partnerships through organizations like the Greater Chamber of Commerce of Bakersfield. the different organizations like the B3K initiative. We have the Kern Literacy Council, which I'm working with already. And by delivering information from the county seat to these outlying communities through these different avenues, I think we can restore some fairness to areas like mine that go traditionally underserved.
And some other issues that I've been talking about your opponents with are oil and gas, which is obviously huge throughout Kern, the aerospace industry, which is huge in your district, homelessness, public safety, law enforcement times, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when it comes to those types of issues, what would you say are your priorities or priority?
So I share all the same concerns in those things, right? I know what it's like to call the police and have nobody come. I know what it's like to call for fire services and it take forever because they're responding somewhere else. So again, it's not just the idea this idea that one person can get elected onto a 5-man board and change everything is, again, kind of narcissistic, right? But if we can build communities that have empowered themselves, organized themselves, and amplified their voices to then speak to the county and speak to positions of power from there, then I think that's when things actually roll. What happens currently in Kern County is people get upset and they complain at the Board of Supervisors. That's not what that's for. The actual way that the government works is it works at the work's done by the staff at the advice of its counties, boards, and commissions, and then with the approval of the Board of Supervisors. So what we need to do to fix these issues is actually enter the conversation at every level. So beyond municipal advisory councils that I would create, I would make it a point to make sure that our areas are represented through the county's boards, commissions, and committees as well. That way we're at every level of the conversation. When money gets divvied out, we're not just going to be at the final budget meeting, we can be at every level of that, every meeting. It's all about information, working together, empowering one another to solve our issues, not electing one person who's going to wave a magic wand and solve all the problems.
Are there any points or issues you kind of already see yourself colliding with the current Board of Supervisors with? Anything that you think, oh gosh, this is going to require a lot of kind of pushing on my end with the existing 4 supervisors at the moment?
I mean, that's really not a question for me to answer. That's a question of the existing Board of Supervisors. Are they willing to work with whoever's elected, or are they only wanting that their own hand-picked candidate selected?
And again, going back to law enforcement response time quickly, Kelly, because during the 2022 debate where you were with Pete Graff and the former supervisor, that's something you kind of really went after the former supervisor for. You were saying, dude, law enforcement response times are way too lengthy. It takes hours for them to respond. And again, that's something you really went after the former supervisor on. So what is your pitch to fix that and quicken up those response times?
So a lot of it's information and misinformation, right? Most people in the county think that the sheriffs don't have enough money to hire more staff. That's not true. The sheriff will tell you that the positions that are missing are fully funded. What we have currently is a recruitment issue and a retainment issue. The county has done a really good job over the last 2 years of addressing that. They offer bonuses now if you want to live in communities you serve in outlying cities and towns. They offer bonuses if you want to transfer over. I'm sure that they offer bonuses on if you refer other police officers over. I think that the way that we make sure that those things are being held accountable for and seeing better reaction times from the police is simply communicating with them. At our council meeting every single month, the sheriffs are there and the CHP is there. They share with us the number of calls. They share with us how we can reduce those calls. And we share with them our concerns. And what's happened now is for the last 6 months is every month they bring in a new deputy. This is a new deputy who's been assigned to the area, just so you know. And now people are seeing that in small towns and communities. But I think there's still a lot more to do. As the sheriff continues to shore up his staffing issues, I will work with the Board of Supervisors to make sure that he gets more beyond that, so that we can expand as we're growing, that we can continue to provide safe streets for our kids and keep our schools safe. I think returning campus resource officers to schools in Bakersfield, it's a responsibility of the sheriff, has to be a huge priority. So my biggest thing there is going to be how can we positively impact recruitment to bring more deputies into the county.
And oil and gas is obviously, again, industry is very, very important to Kern County and District 2. The former supervisor was very conservative when it came to those industries. He was not shy on really kind of going back and forth with Sacramento to protect those industries for us. Where do you stand on those industries? And again, are you going to be as conservative as Scrivner was?
So that's one place where Supervisor Scrivner and I lined up exactly. I 100% agree that what Sacramento is doing to our oil and gas industry is a travesty. Watching people's lives be ruined by decisions of faraway politicians is, if it means something to me at the county level, it means just as much at the state level. So yes, I will 100% be in the fight, pushing back against the governor and whoever's next for these industries. Also, as somebody who's not a partisan politician, I will be able to bring a different perspective to other counties in the way that we build single issue coalitions to push back as well.
And so then where do you stand on the transition to clean renewable energy, which is also being pushed throughout the state by Sacramento officials?
So it's not that I'm against renewable energies. I do think that they are the future, but we're clearly not there yet. I mean, and we shouldn't be paying $4, $5 a gallon for gas to get there. I think we should be increasing oil and gas production, which is really weird because we're at a time in our country where we're pumping more gas than ever without the aid of our largest oil pumping economy. So this idea that we're saving the economy by not pumping oil and gas in California is really kind of weird, especially when the gas is coming from other countries where they pump it in with dirtier methods anyways, and then it's sent across the world. So, I mean, renewables are important. I do think that we should continue to expand those, but not at the expense of oil and gas. I think as our state continues to grow and our power needs continue to grow, that we need a fully, well-rounded energy system, not overly reliant on any one thing.
And in the past, you said you were actually inspired to run for supervisor due to an increase in water rates. And one of your points was that supervisors have more control over rates than our local district water resource boards. And so I'm curious, water obviously isn't an issue that's going away from Kern County either. So how are you planning to tackle the increase in water rates? What could you possibly do as a supervisor?
So I was wrong. I definitely, at that point, I think it was one of the first interviews that I ever gave was actually at the water board meeting.
Okay.
I don't believe that supervisors have that kind of control.
Okay.
But what inspired me to run was they raised the rate during the pandemic when we couldn't go out and petition against it. The entire reason the Prop 218 exists is to make sure that special districts and really any district doesn't force rates down the throats of ratepayers who can't pay it. I took deep offense to them raising the rates, and I've actually shared this with every member on that board who's supporting me in my run, by the way, in that, because I just felt that was wrong. That did inspire me. Now, I do believe that the county supervisors can help with water. One of the ways we do that is we need to encourage our businesses and our local industries to recycle water, make sure that we're reusing water here locally. And then the biggest thing is going to be to push back against the state. It's a man-made drought. I mean, it's simple as that. And the Delta Smelt Project allows more water to go out than is necessary. When I was running for office in 2022, in May of 2022, enough water was allowed to flow out through the Delta in San Francisco to fill Lake Mead from empty to full. And that was in excess of what's scientifically required for the project. By convincing the state to end those projects is going to be how we actually fix our water issues.
And going back to your 2022 campaign, you also mentioned that you wanted to revitalize businesses that have been lost during the coronavirus pandemic. You said government subsidies and tax rebates could be used to attract businesses back to Kern County, and that could in turn bring back local businesses. Tell us where you are with kind of those hopes during this campaign, and also could that potentially be a little outdated 4 years after the pandemic first exploded?
So yes and no. Businesses are no longer closed because of the pandemic. They just never came back. I mean, when you go to small towns throughout the 2nd District, the one thing you're going to see in every town, Rosen, Mojave, Boron, Taft, empty storefronts. It's a plight on communities like mine. It certainly has destroyed local economies. So I still think that that's the right way to go. I think we have an overly large focus on bringing in much larger economies of scale into town and into the county. But it's mom and pop businesses that provide lifelines to small towns. They're the ones who hire people that live there. They're the ones who know the issues. So I'll tell you just an interesting story. When I was a little kid, my mom owned her own store, and it was a convenience store. So we knew every poor family in our town. And I worked in her store from the time I was 7 years old. She paid me in gummy bears and baseball cards. And every Christmas and Thanksgiving, we would bake literally thousands of cookies. thousands of cookies, I kid you not, for weeks at a time. And then we bake hams and we'd buy turkeys. And because my mom knew every family that was struggling, we would bring those families turkeys and hams and cookies. And it was because we were small business owners and that we had that connection with our community. So communities don't grow without small businesses. So yes, we have to create, whether it's enterprise zones or expanding the Renew Biz program, grant program that the county offers. Yes, we need to make sure that those resources are brought to smaller communities so that mom and pop shops come back.
I just want to just a little more specifically tell us how you're going to incentivize those smaller businesses, especially in the remote communities, Kelly, because even here in Bakersfield, which is, I guess, the most metropolitan city in Kern County, mom and pop shops are closing. I know so many local fashion boutiques that probably can't make it past Christmas, and that's in Bakersfield. So again, going back to those smaller, poorer, perhaps more remote communities, how do you incentivize small businesses and how do you ensure they survive?
Well, the resources already exist. The county,
Where?
Here in Bakersfield, the county already we had the chief development business officer come out to our meeting, and he talked about programs to help with payroll, talked about programs to help businesses get started, that they help pay for property taxes for businesses, for rent for businesses. So it's not starting anything new. It's just communicating to people that these are available, making sure that once a quarter, or whatever the case is, we can make sure that those departments are coming to smaller towns and teaching the residents how to grow those things. But you are right, though. The economy is tough, and smaller stores are going away. But we do still see small businesses all across the country thrive. Does that mean it's easy? No, and it's probably harder than it's ever been. I mean, the reality is rent's higher than it's ever been. I mean, the cost of goods, cost of gas, cost of power, everything is higher. And I don't know necessarily what all the answers are, but Jenny, that's the whole point. None of us do. That's why I'm the only one who thinks it's important to speak about collaboration. It's not just my voice. And quite frankly, it's not just what I want. What if I'm completely wrong? Right? What if the people that want to vote for me disagree with me on this issue? That's fine, because we want to fix it together. So it's not so much trying to force what I believe is right down other people's throats, as much as empowering them to speak up for themselves so that we can help each other and really just grow together.
And again, to clarify, you're saying state, county, city resources are available for communities like Mojave and Boron as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there is. We just need to do a better job of communicating the information to small communities.
And last thing for me, Kelly, kind of going back to why you decided to run this time around, obviously there's kind of an unusual, even bigger spotlight on the District 2 seat. And so I'm curious when your decision to run came about and, what was kind of that pushing factor that made you decide, okay, I'm in it to win it?
So I never ruled it out when I lost in 2022. So losing in the primary was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because I immediately refiled to run for my town council. So I was able to learn how the county works for 2 years. I became even more intimately familiar with the issues that my community struggles with. So I didn't just disappear and come back and say, here I am, vote for me. I did the work. And really, it wasn't my idea. I mean, if I didn't think I could win, I would never have subjected my wife to this again. I mean, she's been my absolute champion in my corner this whole time. But it's other people that said, Kelly, we need you to run again. You came in second place last time. We want to vote for you this time. Those people who said, if you run again, we'll support you. They started calling me. So I ran at the urging of my friends, neighbors, and family.
But technically, you would have had 4 years to prepare for a new run, right? But this time you have a very short campaign period. So at what point in time here in 2024 did you start getting those calls? Hey, Kelly, I want you back in the race.
Maybe 4 weeks after everything happened.
Okay. So like May-ish when he started to not show up to the Board of Supervisors
Yeah,
meetings.
April, May.
Okay.
And then I think I got an email from somebody locally who said, hey man, you really should think about it.
Okay.
And that's when I really started thinking about it. And then I actually announced at the Board of Supervisors meeting.
Right.
Which was awesome. I like that.
When the day they decided the seat would be on the November ballot, is that when you officially filed your candidacy?
I did not. So I filed the next day.
Okay.
So
but you announced at that meeting.
I announced at a previous meeting that I was going to run again.
Okay.
And again, it was members of my board, it was members of my community, our school board that said, hey, you really should think about it. Members from Mojave's school board, people from the Air and Spaceport Museum told me I should run. So it was at the urging of other people. I would have been happy to just go back to work.
Well, Kelly, for the sake of time, that's it for me. But anything else I missed when it comes to your campaign? Any issues? Any topics?
I just want to urge, like, I just want to really explain how busy I've been. In the last 3 weeks, I've spoken at 14 elected boards. That means I've spoken to close to 50 elected officials across the county. I've had 2 meet and greets. I've spoken at, and I have 4 more meet and greets planned. I have 6 service projects planned across the district. Nobody's going to work harder for my friends, families, and neighbors than I am.
Well, Kelly Carden Jr., thank you so much again for your time. Can we expect to see you at our October debate?
I will be here.
Alrighty. Thank you so much again for your time, Kelly. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.